Well, Al, can you tell us, you know, the government says that we can't have a log around for Lasca Creek, we can't participate in the core process because there's no timber available for a log around. Can you tell us where that information came from? Did you tell them that, or?
Yeah, in terms of the technical information that the government makes its decisions on, technical forestry information comes from our office. So when the government says that there's no place to log around, then they would have gotten timber information from us.
Can you tell us, though, why ATCO's sworn affidavit to the court indicates that in the next, 5 years or so, 35% of the timber is going to come outside of Lasca Creek? Now, if one just uses simple multiplication, huh?
I don't understand your statement. Like,
well, you see, in their sworn affidavit right here, they say that 35% of their timber will come outside of the Lasca Creek area.
Oh, okay.
Right?
35% of their, without getting too detailed in a whole bunch of figures here, 35% of their licensed volume.
That's right.
In the Kootenay Lake Forest District.
Right, correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. So using simple multiplication of this, well, it's their sworn affidavit, and one would assume they know where they're going to get their timber from. But anyways, using simple multiplication, it would indicate that they have at least 1.75 years worth of timber outside of Lasca Creek in their next 5-year plan. Okay, this would indicate that there is indeed time for a log around. Oh, so ATCO's telling,
I'm not commenting on. You're not going to trap me into commenting on ATCO's affidavit.
There's no trap here.
Let me
it's a simple
tell you.
question as to whether or not the actual information was correctly conveyed to the government.
Let me tell you why you can't log around. Okay.
Okay.
I'll tell you why you can't log around. It's not because who are you?
Yes.
Hi, Deborah. Hi. It's not because there aren't any trees elsewhere. It's not because everything else is logged. It's because everything else is committed to planning. Everybody else's watershed is committed to a planning process. Whether it's Smallwood Creek, the Nelson watershed, Harab Creek eventually, Redfish, every other drainage is committed to a process where there's a public involvement committee already involved. Now, in one rate or another. Now, to take one area and impose it on another and compromise another planning process in someone else's watershed leads me to the conclusion you don't log around.
That is fallacious argument. No, that is a fallacious argument. Yes, it is, because I mean the government. No, you didn't let me finish. Just a minute, please.
Okay. I'll stand here and listen for a while.
Okay. In ATCO's 5-year plan, as well as in their sworn affidavit, there's that much timber that they're going to cut outside of Lasca Creek in the next 5 years. The government has said the way that they're going to have log arounds is to push up the 5-year plan outside of the contentious area. Just using simple multiplication that any high school student could do, there's 1.75 years in the next 5-year plan of ATCO's where they could cut and allow us to take part in the core process. In case you didn't get the message, the people of this area, as well as entire British Columbia, do not believe that there is local input or that it is adequate. That is the reason the core process is taking place. And what we're asking for is to be part of that process. The timber is available, and if it's not, let's see the data to indicate that, because everything we have available to us indicates the timber is available, and you, maybe, perhaps you, I can't say that for sure, has misinformed the government as to the amount of timber available for a log around. And this is in sworn affidavits as well as in ATCO's 5-year plan. You're telling us you're not going to allow them to cut the amount out of Alaska, and you're going to tell, or outside of Alaska. Is that correct?
No, it's not absolutely correct. That's right.
It's not absolutely correct.
The ATCO's other operating area is the Blewett watershed.
That's right.
I think everybody knows that.
That's right.
Now, should I allow overcutting in the Blewett watershed, even though they may be so optimistic?
It's going to be cut in the next 5 years.
I'm not going to argue with
We're not talking about the rate of change.
Let him answer your question.
Yeah, okay.
Am I going to allow a company to overcut in somebody else's watershed, even though they may optimistically hope to do so, because they can't log in Alaska? The answer is no. If the government had chosen there would be no log around, there would be less logging, that would be another matter. But the government said there will be no logging around, and there will be logging in Alaska.
That is not the way that they made the log arounds, and that is not what they stated in their press releases. It was that the 5-year plan was going to be pushed up. An identical situation exists here. You're telling us that you're not going to allow it. That amount of timber that they have on their 5-year plan and that they say they're going to cut outside Alaska, I bet you will go through it, Are you telling me you're not going to let them cut that in Blewett, what they're planning, and what they've stated in their sworn affidavit?
Blewett is already planned. There's an agreed upon level of harvesting there.
Rate?
With the watershed committee and that's what we will respect. And that's the same process that we would respect for any watershed.
Well,
we don't...
Bradley, could I just say that I'm not hearing you answer his question. So could I just repeat what I'm hearing his question to be and ask you to really address it? He's saying...
Well, I'm not sure I understand his question, actually. He's trying to lead me into some kind of mathematical trap. I'm hearing him say that 35% of the timber which ATCO is going to cut over the next 5 years, 35% of it is not going to come from the Lasca Creek drainage. Is that correct? That's what they said in their
That's
affidavit.
right.
Okay, so they
I don't necessarily agree with that.
Okay, so they
because
got
that's subject to plans that they have to yet have approved.
Okay, so what you're telling me is that 35% is based on plans which have not yet been approved,
That's
so
right.
it's not an absolute figure.
It's an absolute figure from their point of view. It's what they're proposing.
Right. And
But it's not what I have approved.
Okay, is that 35% in Blewett, or is it in a variety of areas?
No, it would be in Blewett. That's their only other approved operating area.
Okay, so when you refer to overcutting in the watershed, are you saying that that 35% might be an overcut for Blewett because the plans haven't been put through?
I'm saying that we have an agreed upon harvesting level in Blewett.
Right.
We've agreed with the watershed committee on, and that we wouldn't exceed that unless the committee agreed.
So if you've got that agreed upon level, then I think what this group is asking is what is that agreed upon level and what proportion of the timber that ATCO is counting on in this 5-year plan would be coming out of Blewett? Can you tell us that?
Not without thinking mathematically for a few minutes.
I suggest that might be something you could look up in your office and
No
come out
problem.
and give this group, because what I'm hearing people say is if there are plans in place for Blewett at a given level of cut, whatever it is that you've agreed with the watershed group, whatever, if it's 20% of ATCO's 5-year plan, that would give a year, right?
Right.
If it's 15%, it would give 9 months. And people are, but he heard 35, excuse me, could I just finish? So he heard 35, and using that math and assuming that ATCO was giving an accurate figure, he said, okay, if that's accurate, then why not? And those plans are in place, and everything's agreed on, and you just told me that you do have an agreement with the watershed committee.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. And so you do have a plan, and you do have a volume. Whatever that is, people are saying, why not have that be where ATCO gets its timber for X period of time, whatever percentage of the 5-year plan that is, so that time can be taken to look again at Lasca, because we believe that there's the public support and there's also the need to really look at Lasca again, and that would. So now, do you understand his question and do you understand me?
I understand his question, but it's being in. I understand what you're saying, but it's being made in the context that they just got a forest license this year. They've had a forest license since 1987, and they've never achieved their harvest. All the time they've been planning in Blewett and planning to get into Lasca Creek. So here we are in year 4 or 5 of the forest license, and they haven't ever even achieved. I don't know what figure they've achieved, but they haven't overcut in Blewett at all, and they don't want them to.
No, and
so
I don't think anyone is suggesting that. People are saying whatever the level is, so please don't accuse people here of suggesting that an overcut is appropriate. People are saying whatever the level is that you've agreed to, what is that? And perhaps if you could come back with that information. Am I right that that's...
That's right. It's just what the government has said they're going to do in other contentious areas, that is push up the 5-year plan to allow for the contentious area to be delayed. And, you know, I guess the government has heard that that's not possible here because there is no other timber, but I mean from the figures that are available, it certainly appears to be so. We've repeatedly requested from the government the information as to how they made this decision, along with the City of Nelson, and to date we have yet to hear. We also would like to know who made the decision. It seems like Mr. Miller is misinformed, not only in the amount of timber available for a log ground, but he stated in public, at least according to the Nelson Daily News, that the entire Lasca Creek drainage was 120 years old, previously completely burnt, which is blatantly false. You can look at the forest cover maps, they're available here. One of the few things that are available to the public, and you can see that there's 250 plus stands there, there's trees 600 years old there. So we're just a bit concerned that the government doesn't actually have the correct information.
Well, you'll have to understand that if this is an anti-government demonstration, you're talking to the wrong guy.
Nobody said it was an anti-government. We're just concerned that they don't have the correct information, I said.
In terms of who made the decision, the government's Cabinet Committee on Sustainable Development made the decision, of which Mr. Miller is one of a variety. I'm not sure how many. A dozen cabinet members.
That's based on the information you gave to them.
Partly based on the information I gave to them in a technical sense. No recommendations were given, just straight information partly based on the information from other ministries like environment, partly based on information from people that wrote letters to them, yes.
What was that information?
But you're only letting out selective information, so
No, we're
how
not.
can you give us a
Turn and
complete
listen to
picture?
the person speaking to you. That would be a nice gesture to at least face who's speaking
Well,
to you, you know?
Well, I'm not out here to be rude.
What about the
But-
people's
Like you
concerns in
No, I'm
Nelson?
not.
Can I make a
Community.
suggestion? If
send that
Al could kind of look at you all, then he'd be able to face you a bit.
Product license that went over to KVS. Could you tell me the date at which that was officially stamped, or has it been officially stamped yet?
Yes, it's been officially approved by the Minister of Forests. I think it was in January '92.
Okay, in January 1992 was September 24th was the first public protest at Lasca Creek. So October, November, December, 3 months transpired. And a log around strategy was announced by the government. Why wasn't all of or part of the Weimar Forest product licensee allocated to ATCO to facilitate a log around strategy? I think the questions
well-
that people are asking today is a justification of how the decision was made and the material, the basis on which the decision, the information that the decision was based on. A lot of it came from this office, and I think the public has a right for that, all that information to be disclosed now.
Yeah, I can tell you right now that I am able to disclose information, technical information, but I'm not able to disclose recommendations made to the minister. He is, but I'm not.
Are you comfortable as a district manager, forest manager, that this decision unfortunately appears to have been a centralized political decision that wasn't necessarily based on sufficient data or, for instance, a holistic cost-benefit analysis in terms of Lasca in terms of timber, wilderness, viewscape, water, heritage, cultural values, economics? That's the economic foundation of a real land use decision. And we would like to know, we are demanding that the Forest Service demonstrate that those principles were the basis of which this decision was made. And the evidence that we're finding shows overwhelmingly that that is not so. And we're pleading with you, the district manager, to send a message down to Mr. Miller to respond immediately to this, because that's going to take the heat off the public, it's going to take the issue out of the forest, it's going to take the pressure off industry, the public, the contractor, and the Forest Service if this information is all disclosed. And I think to honor that, there needs to be a deferral in the interim so that this can be reviewed. And this is real public participation.
Yeah.
You want me to state? Make a comment? I'm not sure what you're referring to now, Weimar or Lasca?
I think Weimar and Lasca are connected in a certain sense. My first question was, and I believe you answered it, that Weimar, the decision for Weimar was made in January, and it could have been included to facilitate a log around strategy for Lasca, and it wasn't. We would like to know why that was.
Well, in my role as district manager, I am comfortable with the fact that the decision makers had all the information that I could give them regarding timber supply when they made their decision to transfer that license. And if you want to know why they made a particular decision, then you'll have to write the Minister of Forests. It is clearly his decision as your elected representative. I give him the information in the forestry sense and how it fits in with my timber supply area, my forest district, to make his decision, to base his decision on it. And it's his from there on.
Would you be in support of requesting that information with various legitimate environmental groups here as part of the community?
No, I work for the Ministry of Forests. I would be very likely in a position to respond if he so requested. But I could not support. It's your request, you should make it.
Well, here's a copy of the West Arm Wilderness Group's issues and points that need to be addressed and responded to, I think, by this office and the Minister in Victoria, Dan Miller's office, too.
Okay.
And I'd like to leave that with you today.
Okay. They're both the same? Or one topic? Okay. Thank you.
I just wondered, I heard that there's like not just one road going into Lasca right now, but 3. There's one going up in from behind in Creston, and I just heard yesterday there's one going in through from the watershed in Nelson, going back into Nelson, into Lasca now too. 5 miles.
No, that's not true at all. There's one road that is going into Alaska, and that's the one that's visible, the one you can see from the Harp Ferry. The one that's in the headwaters of Midge Creek right now is not designed to go over the height of land at all. Simply not feasible. If ever there is a road from Whitewater through 5 Mile, it's never designed to be hooked up. It's not feasible. So Lasca Creek would be developed by one road and one road only.
Can I ask you, Mr. Bradley, how do you plan on accessing 5 Mile, Nelson's watershed?
Yeah, the Nelson Watershed Planning Team some time ago reached a consensus that the individual watersheds, the Nelson watershed consists of a variety of drainages. There's Salou Creek, there's 5 Mile, Anderson, and Fell Creeks. And the planning team reached consensus on a decision that they should be accessed separately, that there shouldn't be through roads from drainage to drainage. So we don't know exactly where the road should go. That's further on in the planning process with the planning team. But we do know that there shouldn't have been one higher level upper road that connected the whole South Shore.
Okay, and is there planning for harvesting in Clearwater also, Clearwater Creek?
Yes, there is planning underway for harvesting in Clearwater Creek.
And well, I was just going to ask, will there be harvesting in both Clearwater and 5 Mile at the same time then?
I don't know. I don't know that yet because plans for 5 Mile Creek are way off in the distance yet. There's an integrated watershed management plan yet to be done by the planning team, and there's no development that's possible yet, so I couldn't say yes or no to that answer. But I can tell you that Clearwater Creek has been harvested to some extent in the past. It also has quite a bit of mining history, and the level of harvesting yet to be done there isn't very much because the extent of harvesting has already been taking place.
Is it not Nelson's backup water system?
Yes, it's been identified as by the Nelson Watershed Planning Team, which the city belongs to and we belong to, etc., as an possible alternate water source.
So I just wonder what kind of sense it would make to log the alternate before or at the same time that you log Nelson's watershed. I'm very concerned about that.
Well, like I say, the planning team will have full input into the design of any logging that takes place in Clearwater Creek, and it'll be done with that in mind, that it is a possible alternate source. Not so much a desirable one, but a possible alternate source.
Okay. Speaking of planning teams, I understand in Harrop there's been a person appointed as our community representative. I'm wondering how that happened. I've seen no public meetings announced. We had a public meeting where promises were made about a meeting between yourself and Corky and the people of the community, because the one meeting that I've attended, the one legitimate public planning meeting I've attended, there was a request by the residents for a questionnaire to be circulated asking if we even want the road, and we got consensus on that amongst the community, which is a pretty tough thing to achieve, and I've seen no questionnaire to that effect. Further to that, we had a vote, and there's, I believe, 6 people for the road, 30 against the road at that meeting, and whereupon there was never another meeting called, and we had a person appointed as our community representative. I'm wondering how that came about, the appointment of this community rep.
Well, I don't know for sure, but I believe that the regional district area director, Josh Schmink, approached somebody for the interim, Hans Elias.
Professional forest consultant, yeah. So he was just appointed. We do not get to elect our representative then?
I think that if you people in Harrop Proctor want a different representative, you should meet with Hans and yourselves and choose one.
Well, what happens?
That's simple.
Yeah, we don't have to meet with Hans. We'd like to choose our own rep. We tried to do that, but we've been circumvented.
Forest Service did not pick Hans Elias.
Well,
so if you want to choose somebody else, talk to Josh Schmink then with the regional district.
How did Josh Schmink get the authority?
I wouldn't say it's authority. I think Josh volunteered to help out. It's more along those lines.
Help out?
Yeah.
So could one assume that the Forest Service is continuing this planning process without a Harrop Proctor representation? A meeting has occurred last week. That was on the agenda for the process. So this process seems to me to be proceeding without the folks whose homes the road is going through. I really questioned that procedure. That doesn't seem like a very sound procedure. It seems like a procedure that could end up with a lot of problems for everybody.
There's also something about the original question from Lee about the 35% of ATCO's wood outside of the Lasca area. The thing is this non-public involved Lasca meeting that you have started up recently. The mandate for that from Dale Anderson, your own employee, has said there is no annual allowable cut predetermined before this committee meets, and that all the annual allowable cut is to be a product of the meeting. How then can you say that ATCO has to depend on this percentages in Lasca when your own group says there is no predetermined percentage in Alaska? There seems to be a paradox here that I don't understand.
Well, that's a very good point you raise, and that's why I refuse to get involved in an argument of figures, because we don't know.
Well, I'm being sued because of figures.
Yeah. No.
I'm being sued by the figures that you won't get involved with.
That's your problem.
Thanks very much, Al.
That is your problem. That's the action that you chose to take. There is no predetermined allowable cut for Lasca Creek. There is a figure that we plugged into the timber supply analysis 10 years ago, but that is not even a target figure anymore. The product of the plan will be what the planning team comes up with. I mean, that's you appoint.
Al, could I ask you a question? Now that you can, since you can't tell us what you're going to cut, can you tell us what you're not going to cut? Can you tell us what's going to be left at Lasca Creek when you're done with it?
Yeah.
Also, I would like, just a second, I got a couple other questions that I think are important. I'm involved because of a heritage issue. There's a very large burial site just below where the road's going in now, or will be if the road's allowed to progress. There is a huge burial site in there. I'm also involved with the archaeology branch and understand that when a developer is made to bring in an archaeologist and study an area, the requirements by the archaeology branch is to document exactly what's in the roadway. They're not even required to document what is going to be in the development area. Okay, we hiked that road last fall. The archaeologist was Ian Wilson. He said there was nothing in the roadway. Okay, we went and walked the same roadway that he walked. We saw sites above the road, we saw sites below the road. They're not required by the archaeology branch to document those sites because they're not directly impacted by the road. Now, winter's happened, and there's been a lot of erosion around the road. We can't even assess the damage on heritage sites because those sites were never documented and never made to be documented by the archaeology branch. Now, I've been to the burial site. I know exactly where it's at. I know exactly where the road's going to be, and it's right adjacent to Lasca Creek, where Cadillac-sized boulders have been tossed down the creek by erosion. Now, I have a considerable concern about the heritage site, the burial site, which is why my elders have mandated my involvement and have made a mandate supporting the people who are in opposition to Lasca Creek. We also have another situation where these forestry products, by and large, are going to go to Celgar, which is creating a huge pollution problem in the Columbia River. And you can say, Mr. Bradley, that you're not responsible for what Celgar does, but you are inadvertently responsible for getting timber to mills that are causing chlorine heavy metal compounds to come down and sit in Lake Roosevelt, which are also pumped into Banks Lake, and which is the reservoir receptacle for the Columbia Basin Irrigation Project, which irrigates the entire Columbia Basin region, which is wheat, corn, hops, mint, apples, you name it, grapes, it's all there. It is creating a severe pollution problem, according to Dr. Ed Brock. We're just a few steps behind what is happening in Japan by these problems. And I think the forestry has to take a position and has to become involved and has to step up to the plate in its responsibility to requiring these mills to either adhere to International Joint Commission requirements to stop the emissions or diminish emission flows. I think it has to be 100%. I think that you need Native people on your planning team, because heritage sites aren't important to you, they're important to us. They're important to the public. And I'd like to know where you stand on those issues.
Well, you see now, touched upon quite a few issues there, some of which are beyond me. But in terms of the archaeological values and heritage sites, I suggest that you attend a Lasca planning team meeting and express your concerns.
Will you inform me of when those meetings are going to be?
Certainly. I think that you're welcome to observe, and by talking...
I was at the first meeting, and I suggested...
Can I answer a question?
Well, this is part of it. I suggested that the Snipes people should be asked to be involved in it. And actually, there's a man by the name of Val. I don't know his last name. He's a rather large man, but it had apparently gone to him, and he was supposed to invite the Snipes people. But he seemed to think, well, gee, there's this Chief Louis from the Lower Kootenay band, and I'm not quite sure who I should approach. But in the meantime, they still haven't been asked. The Snipes people still haven't been asked, so I'm a little concerned about that.
It's your responsibility to ask these people. It's their land.
Well, that's not my judgment to make. That's a question of government.
Yeah.
Whoever's talking to me is that, yes, you're welcome to address the planning team.
Address? How about be a part of it?
Yeah.
I said address. So.
That's my concern. The word observation is address. I've worked I live over in the valley, Slocan Valley, and we've dealt with the Forest Service from the Arrow Lake District. And all of the processes we've ever been given are simply token gestures that come and watch us plan the destruction of your watershed, or come and nod when you like it, or your processes don't really suit the public because they're not democratic. There's no voting rights. You're asking Marilyn to come and watch you and your planners possibly plan the destruction of their burial grounds. If she comes and says to you, look, here's my burial ground, here's our people's, we want it protected. What kind of process do you go through to make sure that she has that right and you have that responsibility to honor that right?
I'll leave that for the planning team to decide, to discuss.
Will you recommend to the planning team, sir, that this be taken into account? Right now, what has been said right now, will you recommend?
I recommend to the planning team that they hear what Marilyn has to say.
Well, I suggest you talk to Dale Anderson, because Dale Anderson told me that he was going to invite the Snipes people to be a part of the planning team, not invited to address it or to observe, but to be a part of it.
I don't think that's a correct statement.
That is correct.
That is a correct statement. I was there.
That is a correct statement.
Well, I'll talk to Dale.
Pass the buck.
There were wait a minute.
Oh, sorry.
There were a couple of other issues I'd like to for you to
This
continue
was relevant,
answering.
Marilyn,
Okay.
if I could just say it. It's that I know that as district manager there are various discretionary powers that you in fact have. And what I'd really be curious about is what situations do you actually use those discretionary powers to make judgments? Because continuously you're putting it back to other people as if you have no power and as if you have no discretion in your position. And I know that as far as district manager, you do have discretion. So why I'm bringing it in, Marilyn, because I'm hearing you refer it, and you do have discretionary power. And I'd like to ask you why, in this case, you're not using your discretionary power to say this does seem like a valid, crucial representation to be on the planning process. Okay, so is that okay, Marilyn? That
yes.
Well, to answer your question, the discretionary power that I have is how the ultimate plan in Lasca Creek should look. What I don't have discretionary power over is whether there will be a plan for Lasca Creek or not.
We don't want
That's
Lasca
government.
Creek to be locked at all.
That's where I don't have discretion. That's government that makes that decision.
But somebody has to be responsible for this people here.
Those
I don't believe this.
government are the people that you elect. Well, yes, I guess so, ultimately. Government
If you get a choice to use that democratic process and have a say, then you are the government. But if you are simply having people in power that take away those democratic decisions by placing processes that are meaningless,
I can't really address that.
Can you please finish your answer, sir, about what you can actually, what are your powers?
I can affect the design of the plan. Not whether there will be a plan or a road, but how it should ultimately look. That I have some discretion over that.
And do you have any power in putting a 24-month deferral on,
no, I don't.
on what's going on?
Can you make a recommendation?
No, I don't.
So tell us if somebody can come here tomorrow, day after, who has this decision? Because we are here and we want somebody to make this decision now.
Yes. The decision rests in the hands of government. The people you elect and their cabinet committee on sustainable development.
We have elected Corky. Remember Corky Evans? He was elected. He is our elected MLA. He gives us the same line you're giving us. He has no power. He's a backbencher. He has no representation.
So who will hear us?
So is it Miller? Is that who it is we have to speak with?
Miller says he doesn't have
Why can't you bring Miller here? Why can't you suggest Miller comes here because you're the person,
follow my orders.
but you are the person who's telling us that he's responsible.
No, the cabinet committee on sustainable development is responsible. He is one member. Environment, municipal affairs, I can't even name all the ministries. There's about 8 or 10 of them.
But the recommendations you make,
I do not make.
Yes, you do.
No, I did not.
You have a 5-year plan. You have a 5-year plan for every area.
In terms of the log around thing in Alaska, I do not make recommendations.
Can you?
Did you?
No. I provide information and technical options. They make the decisions. I don't tell them what even to think.
So a technical option is how you think it should be logged?
A technical option was, can we log around? Where else would they go? That kind of thing.
And you
Well,
say
now, when the elected official Corky Evans says to us in a public statement that the reason we're logging watersheds is because that's all that's left to log, why aren't we hearing from you then? If you're saying, no, that's not true, that because...
No, I didn't say that. I said that is true.
So you're saying that all that's left to log are watersheds.
No.
Now, don't you feel...
You're mixing the words up. Watersheds...
What did you say then?
You can't take 10 drainages, 5 of which are watersheds, 5 of which aren't. Calculate a sustainable harvest for all 10, and then exclude 5 that are watersheds. They're part of the harvest. They're an integral part. And when you're halfway through the process, you don't throw those 5 watersheds out, because they are an integral part. The whole system is based on those being included.
Maybe the system needs to be changed.
But when you're
that's
logging,
where government makes big decisions.
when you're logging watersheds, you're destroying water quality.
We don't
which means you're not only destroying water quality, you're destroying fisheries habitat, you're destroying a lot of things. Okay, now you're saying to us all that's left to log are watersheds. And I think the people believe and understand and know that when you're logging watersheds, you're doing a lot more damage than you're doing when you're logging non-watershed areas. And that means that if you're destroying the potential of the land and the water to come back, you have a responsibility to come up with a plan that doesn't destroy the ability of the land to come back. You can reforest an area, but you can't re-watershed an area.
Hi, I'm Paul. I work with the Forest Service, and I'm not involved in kind of the technical harvesting decisions, but I just wanted to impart this to you. It sounds like, from the people that have been speaking, I get a sense that you feel that we may actually be capable of doing something that we honestly felt or had information that led us to believe it was going to damage those watersheds and other resources that we have to consider. Please keep in mind that that is exactly what we're trying not to do. And I appreciate...
Track record doesn't come
down. Okay, that's fine, and there's a lot of places that you could point that out, okay? And I won't argue that point. But I know the people involved here, and they're humans just like everybody here. And they have... if I just can finish.
We want input.
We want to be
able to make a decision.
I just want to make this one point, and then I'll be happy to hear everything you have to say. That the people here are working towards a general, what they consider to be the best and least damaging methods to see those areas harvested. Do you think they could actually, in their mind, think, okay, well, we're going to do this and it's going to compromise that, but I can justify it? They're not doing that.
I thought it was based on economics. That's my understanding.
Well, if they're going to do the right thing, then why don't they do selective logging instead of clear cutting?
Because the United Nations definition.
That's really the less damaging.
I can't answer all those questions. The only point I wanted to make is that these are real people. And
so
they're
real
not.
People too. We have to live in the environment, and the district isn't very good.
I appreciate that, and I know that's why you're here. But understand that these people in here are honestly trying to do the best with what they have.
Yeah, they're honestly getting a paycheck every other week too.
That's right.
They're being paid to rape this land. They're being paid to make the decisions the government wants them to make. They're being paid to give technical advice so that the government can do whatever it is they want to do. They're not paid to listen to me.
But they have a conscience also, and that's my point.
But a conscience isn't the slope. The slope is the slope, and you're talking about roads into watersheds. You're talking about they're going to do the best they can. The best isn't good enough.
Demonstrating this conscience more.
I can't argue those points. Okay, I just wanted to make the point that you know we share a lot of your concern.
But we
really
can only voice those concerns. You're under the Ministry of Forest, BC government checks. We're not, so we could say these things, and that's why we're here saying them, because we aren't bought off. We're still hoping for water for our children. I'm still hoping that there are watersheds. My husband's a forest technician. We lived in northern Washington in the Lake Quinault area. We saw what they did to Claylock Ridge there. We lived in northern Oregon. We see what comes after you guys have done your planning. And they told us they were doing planning, and they told us the same thing. They were humans. I know they were. I was married to one of those humans, and he shared with me the way in which the planning goes. It goes according to what he's told. You go in there and you get a harvest plan. You make sure that you get a profit. Profit is the bottom line of harvesting, not protection of the water, because the Water Act itself
does not protect. Right there. That's the problem. That's what needs to be changed.
Is there something that...
Okay, let's not get into a philosophical debate. What did you people hope to accomplish?
We want to have a deferral for Lasca so that this democratic process can happen. You guys have jumped the democratic process here.
We want public hearings.
Get inside your heart, Mr. Bradley.
Public hearings.
Public hearings. We want International Joint Commission to come in here and tell us that the trees you're giving to Selgar aren't going to float down the Columbia River and cause my future generations to have birth defects.
Right on. Does that concern you, Mr. Bradley?
Just a minute. I want to give you an example. You take this, clear cut it.
That will never be clear cut.
No, I'm just giving an example.
Because it's right by your office.
You planted with trees that size.
That's not the only reason.
Planted with trees that size. Next year, half of those trees are gone because of the soil erosion. No water, no soil, and there's no water to stay back in that soil. You should know all this. You were trained for it.
Yes.
I was trained for it since I was that small. By people that are 120 years old. I'll never reach that age. You never will. You know why we won't reach that age? Because we are eating your groceries, we are eating your stuff you leave up on the hills, leave all over the country. We're eating your leftovers. Before you came, we were eating the choice food of all of the world, the globe. We can't go back to it. We'll never go back to it. We can't because of all this destruction done already. You talk about reforestation. Reforestation is nothing. You've already destroyed the soil, you've already destroyed the water. You cannot bring it back. You can't. You know this yourself. You take a look in the Okanagan. All the creeks are dry already now. Now. And they used to run all summer. And how many years university you got?
5.
5. It takes you 5 years of training to destroy us and what's up there. No thanks.
I feel, Mr. Bradley, that I'm not sure if you really realize, being in the forest industry yourself, what the chain of life really entails here. And until you go and sit on a piece of moss and see how many minute little morsels are really involved there, and what really depends upon everything to make things work. I'm not sure, if that 5 years of university, has
5
done
years of
anything
university doesn't qualify one to do that. It just teaches one to think. So.
I have a question.
And I think a lot of people are aware of that. Not necessarily. It opens your mind a bit.
Mr. Bradley,
anyways,
is it true that if the planning committee doesn't reach a consensus, that you make the decisions?
In terms of the design of the plan, yes. Yeah.
As the way I understand it,
but
if you reach a consensus,
is it also true that amongst your peer group here they call you Big Brother?
Pardon me?
Big Brother?
Never heard of that before, no.
Mr. Anderson named you as Big Brother in the meeting on planning committee meeting.
Yeah.
He named you as Mr.
Well, I doubt that, but the planning team is hopefully will operate by consensus, and the people, yes, the people that I have placed on the planning team, I have empowered to reach agreement. It's that simple.
Will you now, sir, give agreement to have different
for me, please?
Someone involved right here now to be members on that planning team?
Pardon me?
Will you now agree, sir, to allow the different members in this region to be?
No, I wouldn't do that. No.
But you can do that, sir.
No, I can't. No.
Why
I think.
not?
Yes, and if you're not happy with it, then go back to those people and deal with that situation. I'm willing to have a person from Pierre Cruger on the planning team.
Why won't you allow people on the planning team, sir? Why won't you?
Because I want to keep a planning team that isn't too large, but represents a variety of interests.
But if you don't...
No.
But if you don't let any of these groups be a representative, then how can you have so many?
The groups that are here, depending on where they live, should all be represented.
Did they have any say at
Is anybody here from Pierre Cruger? Then go back and choose your representative. Go back and talk to Hans. Talk to Josh.
How about our questionnaire? We had consensus on circulating. Is that going to be done or no?
I'm not sure what questionnaire you're referring to.
Well, we had consensus in our community that we wanted a questionnaire circulated to the whole West Arm areas E and F, asking if we even wanted that road.
That's decided, Paul. That is decided.
Not by us.
Do you want to participate on the planning team? Then choose your representative. If you don't, then do other things.
In other words, all we can do is help you go ahead and log it, right? That's all we can
Government has made the decision that it will be logged to some extent. And you can affect the design.
We don't want it to be logged though, so maybe we don't want it input. We want an input to have it saved. We don't want to have input to have it logged.
Citizens, Nelson's citizens, the people that really live in this area, not the places where the logs are taken, exported out. We don't care about that. We care about what pristine beauty we have here and what a jewel we really have. We don't know what we have until it's gone. I don't know how you feel about drinking this water that's going to come out of the watersheds when it's all gone.
I think it'll be taken care of.
Polluted water we're going to have.
Okay, I need to hear one at a time, otherwise
Yeah, something
I'll
I
be
really
wasting
would
your
like
time
you
too.
to advise you to look around, not just locally, globally. Look at what's happening all over the world, that one country after another is being threatened with heavy droughts. England is suffering droughts. I just spent 2 years in Europe. I know what's going on there. Look at Zambia. Zambia was in the tropical belt of Africa 2 years ago, exported major amounts of food. They just had their summer. Worst drought in 200 years. All the water holes are dried. Wildlife is dead. People are dead. No crops. Nothing. England is threatened. All of Europe is threatened. California, the prairies, every year, droughts are getting worse and worse. Before you destroy one more watershed, look at when Canada will be on that list, because we are the ones, the trees of here and Brazil provide the whole earth with humidity and with rain. And the more we destroy them, we will not have water. Canada is one of the last countries with this amount of trees and humidity. We're the last. Think about that. One of the last countries in the whole world. All the forests of Africa have been destroyed. All the forests of Europe are dying and being destroyed. This is really vital. The ozone layer, it's all connected. We know we're in a crisis. We know how bad the ozone layer is. It's been worse than they ever thought it would be at this time. Before we keep on destroying, we have to stop. You know, what good is it to make a profit when there won't be any food to buy?
Here's our chance. Here is our chance to work together.
Can I, Paul, can I take it that this is the statement of the group? Or is just for
Excuse me, sir, could you please answer what the lady just said?
I don't have an answer to her concerns. They're valid concerns, and it's not something that I can affect.
But you're part of it.
You can affect it tremendously.
You're part of every single person.
I'm not going to get into a fight with you about this. I'm not pessimistic. I'm optimistic.
Has to take a certain responsibility. Have you been to Ethiopia?
I don't really see much more in talking.
I think people need to realize that there's no point in attacking Mr. Bradley.
Yeah, it's a difficult
it's no
thing
point
for
in
him to
attacking
be doing
him.
here
Okay?
today.
I don't think we're attacking Mr. Bradley. I think we're trying to tell the truth about what's
happening. It sounds like there's a lot of attacks on Paul
we're just telling him the truth. Sorry,
and if
we're
you're,
attacking
Paul,
him.
just a minute. If you're laying the blame of all of the global problems, as it appears to
But
be,
we're part of it.
No, we're
Bradley,
talking
then
about
you're hitting
watershed destruction being the cause of that.
We are all part. We're all part of it, correct?
Okay. One of the main players in
Then
that
it's no good for me to attack you, or for you to attack us. If we're in this together, we need to talk about it.
Well, I think that's what we're doing, and I think what she's trying to do is point out the history of destruction and what comes after watershed destruction.
And I think
so that's relevant. It has nothing to do with Mr. Bradley, but
good.
Mr. Bradley has something to do with the planning of watershed destruction. And you call it development, but I have never seen anyone develop a watershed. The Creator developed them, not Mr. Bradley, and Mr. Bradley in all his power, or Mr. or Honorable Miller, or whoever has those powers, never will have the power to replace water. That is not the human power. The human power is to protect it, and that's what we're asking Mr. Bradley to participate in.
And I feel it's our responsibility as human beings to pay attention, okay, and come together and work together with what we know. We learn from our past. We learn from what's happened and all the destruction. That's what Luna is trying to say here. Why don't we learn something, and why don't we start now? And why can't we come together and work together as a group? Stop just thinking of money.
I was not attacking, I was merely suggesting that you read up about what's happening in Africa and in Europe and about the drought situation in the world. And really find out what's been happening in the last couple of years and how fast the droughts are happening. And realize how important this watershed is all I was suggesting, and that you personally look into it and get that information and take it into your heart to really realize where this planet stands right now as far as drought threats are going. That's what I was trying to say, not an attack.
It's very important to get a referral on this road now so that really thorough studies can be made of the whole world in this area. And there's people willing to do that. But we need the time to do that, to demonstrate its value.
Could I make one more suggestion for your planning process? And that is that I understand that when you do a planning process, you consider all of the economy that's coming in from logging. when you consider the economics of development, you don't consider recreational economics. That is not a part of the equation. And so what I would like to see in forestry development is to let recreation, the economics of the recreation component be involved in the decisions that forestry is going to make, because those are viable. Recreation is a viable industry. It does bring in a lot of money. If you don't consider that in your equation and then you destroy a major recreational area, then you're cutting off a part of the economy that could be very important to British Columbia and the world.
I think you have a good point there.
Thank you.
I'd like to, if I could, acknowledge, thank you for coming out today. As a member of the community to a member of the community and not necessarily the Forest Service, I would like to request that you send a comprehensive letter to the Premier and the Minister of Forests in Victoria outlining what basically is an untenable problem in this valley that you're experiencing right now. And part of me feels for the difficulty here that you're experiencing, and I do understand that, like all of us, you're only one person in it. But as a member of the community, I believe that it is within, I don't want to use the word power, but discretionary powers to forward some kind of a letter to Mr. Miller stating that it would be a good idea for somebody from Victoria to come soon and talk with the groups, because if not, we're all going to find ourselves in this situation continuing, and it isn't any fun for anybody. And we all come out, I think, being the losers in the long run. And that's what I would like to ask of Val Bradley today.
Wait, you write a letter.
I'll pass your concern on to the Minister of Forests.
Could you pass a copy of the concern to...
No, I'll speak to him directly.
Yeah, Miller.
Yeah.
So what we're asking for here today, let's see if I understand this. What we're asking for here today is public hearings, disclosure, International Joint Commission involvement. We're asking for Sinayuks and possibly others on the planning team.
I haven't heard one thing yet that I can say yes to.
A future on this earth?
Try that one.
Can I ask you something that wouldn't be too hard? Have you done any studies on Lasca? Like, what studies have you done on, like, the...
We've done some basic resource inventories.
And what are those?
Well, it doesn't matter how many
Not
studies
just
you do.
on the creek.
Somebody will critique
They're
it.
available here. Can I get into your office today to see that? I would very much like to look at that.
Can you bring
this
it out?
This is a public building. How do you
It's a
exclude
public
me?
building, but
I'm a
you
member
can't
of the
get in.
public. How do you exclude me? That doesn't exclude me. That doesn't exclude me, Mr. Bradley.
No,
That
I'm trying to answer your question.
No,
I'll
you're
give you a
not.
reason why.
No, you're not. That's not an answer.
Secondly,
this button has nothing to do with the answer.
Yeah. The other part of the answer is, when the truck goes by, is that I have been warned that there was going to be an attempt to occupy the office. And as long as there's a demonstration outside the office here, the door is locked. I have a responsibility to protect public assets.
So you do have power, I see, to protect public assets. Those are public assets. Those trees are public assets.
Using my power here, I don't know. Oh. But I would rather deal with that. I would rather deal with that than with an occupancy problem.
This is our building.
Did we ask for roundtable process?
Yeah,
our trees. How about a deferral on that bloody road?
So, are you willing to do this every week with us? Is the forestry? Well, I can tell you, it's going to get worse than this. I can tell you that right now because people feel angry and desperate. And if you don't know what anger and desperate means, look at LA, look at Nicaragua, look wherever people have destroyed the earth, and you will see something that isn't pleasant, and it's democracy that keeps that from happening. And if you're going to lock buildings and you're not going to access us information that's rightfully ours, then you are setting something very negative for a future in Canada, and in particular this area. So we're asking you for democracy.
Creation, Mr. Bradley.
I've always had a very open door policy.
Except for today.
Yes.
Well, why?
And last year at this time, I guess last July, there was a tent city here. I opened up the building, allowed people to use washrooms, etc. It was very courteous.
Nothing happened?
Doesn't matter. I wasn't blocking access to anybody. Now it's only because I've been warned by somebody that there could be an occupancy, and it's only because there's been some potential sabotage on the road that there's an element among you that I don't know, and I cannot take that risk.
Yeah.
I really can't.
I wanted to ask you about that article in the newspaper.
Oh yeah, let's refer to that article because that is important that we deal with that.
Then it must be closed, am I right?
Is there people working in there?
Mr.
Yes.
Could you address this question?
When the group breaks up, I'll open the doors.
I wanted to ask about this business. The embankment where Crowsdale Creek runs into a culvert, you will see big steel gratings that were put there.
Yeah, that gets me. That's sort of a point that when the road fell down in Silverton, when the whole mountain came down because of clear cutting 11 years ago, that was an act of nature, an act of God. When three things, I don't even know how many, rolled in on a brand new road, which you know yourself needs 2 years to settle. So obviously that road isn't settled up there, is it?
No,
it's open to that kind of erosion, isn't it?
I don't know your name.
I'm glad you don't know my name because I don't think my name's relevant. I'm talking about the rocks on the road.
Yes.
I'm saying
to address
that
your point, we did not jump to any conclusion.
you called it sabotage, did you? I saw that letter.
It was very obvious that somebody...
Why was it obvious?
Why was it obvious?
I want to hear this, why it was obvious. I want to see why it was obvious.
I don't think I need to explain to you why it was obvious.
That's why I need to know to find out.
You've accused
I asked the same question. It's a good question. I have no answer for that. It's ridiculous.
It is. You're saying it's sabotage and you don't have an excuse as to why you're saying it's sabotage.
But get back to the other point. As long as there's that element out there, I don't know who they are.
What element? What element?
Maybe you're afraid of the wrong people.
You've got no proof of that.
What about the road, Mr. Bradley? What about the road and destructive elements?
Bradley, I want to tell you something.
Wait, you can't leave yet.
Goodbye. That was hopeless.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you feel like Al Bradley answered any of the questions that were actually presented to him today.
Well, I think a lot of the important questions that were directed at Al Bradley, he didn't have answers to. And I think that's a large part of the reason why people here. There are legitimate questions that are being asked that deserve to be answered as to why this decision to continue with logging and road building in Lasca came about. And I don't think that the government has those answers. I don't think that the decision was based on a true holistic cost-benefit analysis in terms of timber, water, viewscape, tourism, heritage, cultural values, etc. It wasn't based on that. If it was, why aren't they demonstrating? Why hasn't the government publicly disclosed this information? How come we have to ask for it?
So public disclosure is what you feel is really one of the most important things here.
Public disclosure is part of the first step for the government to explain its rationale and reasons behind the decision. The next step is for conservation groups and interested people in the public to analyze and review this material and then to engage in a dialogue, a meaningful dialogue with the government about where it's good and where the shortfalls are. And this this process has been denied all right since the Socred government to this day today. And I know that it would appear that the intention of the core process and Stephen Owen's commission is to do that. But we've been told that that process could be 2 years away. Now there's a lot of legitimate and important non-timber values that are going to be lost and compromised in that period of time. And that isn't acceptable to a great many people in the valley.
Great, thanks. So what do you feel would be the next step as far as what to do in this situation?
Oh, there's a lot of contingency plans that could go down if these guys don't stop the road. One of the Yoka situation in 90 was based on these same problems that we have here, protecting the burial grounds. Theirs was from a golf course going through, and ours is from big industry.
So do you think, can you actually see it going to that extreme?
Well, anything's possible. If we were told by our elders to put a stop to the road, then that's what we're here to do.
How do you feel about the gathering of people that are here? Do you feel that it's been effective in any way?
Well, it's good that the general public get involved. Without public support, it would make our struggle a lot harder. We have the backing of the tribal councils in the Okanagan, the Elders Council, also from the Okanagan, and various other tribal councils and Elders Councils throughout the province on this burial grounds issue. So we're not just one or two people here. We represent quite a number of the native population.
Is there anything else you'd like to say as far as this issue?
Oh, well, just stop the road. Like, that's our main concern, is stopping of the road and protecting the watersheds for the next 7 generations and beyond, hopefully. But government has to enforce their environmental laws a little more stringently, which we conveyed that message to them a few days ago. And so...
Which government was this sent to? Which department?
It says Department of Environment.
What was their response?
He didn't have much to say. He said it's... give us a runaround, as usual.
Okay, thanks very much.
Well, my federal name is BC Native, PIB brand, Central District. My number is 188. My English name is Pierre Cruger. I reside in Okanagan area. I'm a descendant of the lakes. And now, what I see here happening is the desecration of another part of Mother Earth. And the Earth, if you can look at Earth as in the context of a liver. The liver has the ability to reheal itself when it gets damaged. But once it goes beyond the part of rehealing itself, and there's too much damage to it, you know, what happens to a bad liver, you eventually die a slow death. And this is what I see happening here with this clear-cut logging. The multinational corporations and the corporations are the people who really run this country. They call Canada the land of the free. And you look around and you just look at the past actions of concerned citizens in this province. Soon as multinational corporations or the corporations gave their directions to their puppets in the government, and the government in turn gave their walking papers to the uniformed thugs, which being the RCMP, and then the concerned citizens are the ones that get harassed, they get arrested. You know, when the really culprits walk away smiling with an extra few bucks in their pocket. I mean, how many people really benefit from the, you know, in the areas these multinational corporations are? How many people really benefit? 2, 3, dozen? You know, they may put a few bucks back into the economy, but in reality, the rest of the money is going out of the country to different countries, across the line, and the community ain't really gaining anything in reality. But they're the ones that have to suffer the consequences after these multinational corporations and corporations leave. And I'll give you an example. At Brenda Mines, it closed down 2 years ago. Yet they have a holding pond there, probably maybe a quarter size of this lake, and that's filled with contaminated water. A year and a half ago, they had 300,000 gallons of contaminated water spillage, which went into the Okanagan Lake, and that was human error. Now, who paid for that? You know, nobody paid for it. Who suffered? The people that fish. The fish suffered. The birds that eat the fish. Then 2 years prior to that, there was another spillage. They did a count of how many Kootenay were. They counted was 20,000 Kootenay dead on account of the second spillage, you know, and that's the ones they counted. It's not the count of thousands they've missed. And, you know, this is just an example of the multinational corporations and corporations, the kind of bullshit they leave behind. Then the general public has to live with it. They have to suffer for it. And they have to pay for it, not these corporations or multinational corporations. And then another one is forestry. Okay, who replants more trees? The forest companies or the public? You know, and that's a good question to ask. If somebody's really looking there, I do believe the general public replants more trees than the forestry, because the general public have concerns, and it's groups like this and other environmental concerned citizens that do a lot of replanting. And I think they plant a lot more trees in the forestries, while they just come in, cut the shit out of the trees, and this clear cutting is devastating. And a lot of this area in the Okanagan interior have a lot of uranium deposits. Now, if people were to really look into the uranium situation in this city over here called Nelson, they'd be surprised how much uranium is in the streams and in the water and in the sediments, because they have these studies at the Mines and Energy office downtown here. And that's something, you know, people have to think about. And I'll use another example in the uranium thing. About 8 years ago in the Okanagan, the the allowable amount was 0.05. Now for about 5 years ago they raised the allowable amount to 0.07, and I don't know if it went higher than that, but this is, to me, is brainwashing, you know. Once people get that in their head and they start thinking, oh, you know, it's okay, it's safe, you know, some scientists said it's safe for us, you know. Who's telling the truth? You know, things like this is, it's gotta stop. You just take a look at what happened last week in LA over a judgment that was passed by a court. Now, if people, concerned people were of the environment were get all a little more pissed off, you know, the same kind of actions could happen clean across Canada and the USA. You know, 47 people died so far, over $500 million worth of damage just on account of biased judgment. Now, when these people get tired of protesting and sitting around and trying to negotiate with these governments, puppets of the multinational corporations and corporations, when they get tired of that, you know, who's going to be the real blame for the actions that start to happen? Because, you know, you just have to take a look around and see all the unrest in BC anyways of the environmental issues, and then the unrest of our people concerning graveyards and heritage sites. You know, they have a Heritage Act, and there's only been 2 cases that have been taken to court, and you know, in protection of our burial sites. You know, how that tells you how good their Heritage Act is for us. You know, 2 cases out of hundreds of thousands of sites that have been desecrated already. You know, this is a really one-sided thing here. And you got archaeologists that, you know, whoever pays them, that's the kind of report they're going to write up to satisfy whoever pays them. And it's usually the corporations that pay these archaeologists to do an assessment. And they usually write what these multinational corporations want to hear, so they could receive a payday. If they write the truth, you know, these guys would tell them go flake off and find another job. You know, we don't need your kind of.
So you don't trust whatever kind of studies come out of the ministries as far as the burial sites and stuff.
Well, you just have to take a look at what happened over in Valak and then what happened into Mount Currie, what happened up in the Okanagan area. You know, all these sites we know of, and even these archaeologists and the ministers were aware of. Yet, but when the multinational corporation says, we want that road through, you know, who won out? It wasn't the people. You got these concerned citizens in the coast for these 1,000-year-old trees. And who's winning? Not the people, it's the multinational corporations. You know, one of these days I do believe we will have a real government. And that government being in a sense, developed after the native aspect of living in this country. Because, you know, we only take what we need. We don't take any more or any less. And we've been surviving here since time immemorial.
So it sounds like you think that there needs to be a whole restructuring of government, like of people. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. You just take a look at the hopes the NDP government raised in everybody. Now they're running around pulling the wool over everybody's eyes. They're reliving the Socrates lies. And they had this environmental assessment thing here last week on the 27th, Dave Lovelock. You know, to me that was just a circus sideshow, you know, because these little meetings they do to go around to get community conciliation is BS, you know. If they really want community conciliations, you know, they should have big general public meetings where everybody can speak at once. But they don't do that anymore, rarely. They have these little sideshows where people walk in there all day and throughout the day and the evening, because that way they don't have a whole crowd to contend with. And they pacify whoever comes in and walks out. Then they don't have to deal with all the real issues, you know, when a whole bunch of people get together. Because a lot of these people live in fear.
So what's the answer, Pierre? What do you think? I mean, what should people do now?
People should quit pacifying themselves. Quit looking for easy way out. Quit looking for another excuse so they could put it off for another day or another year. You know, and they talk about planning for the future. We'll have a future meetings, or we'll organize a big meeting down the road. That time for that has come to pass. Silence is no longer golden in the so-called province of BC. Because if people don't get a backbone and stand up and start talking, you know, our grandchildren, children is going to suffer. Because whatever happens today ain't going to affect, you won't feel it and I won't feel it. Our kids won't feel it. Maybe our grandkids will feel some of it, but our great-grandchildren are going to feel whatever happens if people don't stand up and say no more, you know. And that's reality. You just take a look at the water quality. The most important thing in life is water. Without water, there wouldn't be nothing living on this earth. It would be another Mars or Jupiter or a moon. Now the water quality in BC is really bad. And this environmental assessment package they had floating around says clean water quality is plentiful in BC, you know, and that's a downright lie. Because it ain't. You just have to take a look at the Columbia River, the Fraser River, the Skeena River, and all these other lakes that are connected to these rivers. And you tell me how many clean lakes there are. I believe there are 3 clean lakes in BC, and one of them happens to be in this area. And the water quality is something that people have to really be concerned about. Because without water, you know, clean water, you can always have sickness. When you have dirty water, you have sick communities, people getting sick, cancer, deformed babies, deformed fish, animals. That's even happening right today. We have deformities in our animals. We have cancer growth in our game in the Okanagan area. And that's due to the mining and the logging and the pesticide sprays they use when they're logging. And these things are real. These are happening right today. And our deer and our moose count is way down below average.
Okay, as far as anything else, like as far as any kind of closing statement, do you have anything else you want to say? Like as far as each individual, what should they do? Do you have any suggestions or?
But before you sit down to eat, or before you go to bed, and you hold that glass of water in your hand, think what kind of legacy you're going to leave your great-great-grandchildren. Now, if you have any compassion for the ones that follow you, your lineage, think about that when you take that drink of water. And if you don't have any backbone, letters, whatever written is just as good. But letters and all that, I think, is a time of the past. It's time for people to start standing up and holding that glass of water in their hand and saying, no more. My great-grandchildren should be able to drink the same quality of water I'm drinking today.
My name's Marilyn Burgoon, and I live in the Slocan Valley. The reason I'm here is I have a real concern about the quality of water in the Kootenays, and I feel that whatever happens to Lasca is what's going to happen to all the watersheds here. And I think Lasca is the last stand with regard to water because it sets the precedent of how they can get into any watershed they care to get into. And as you can see by the building, the way they're doing it is a closed door policy where people don't have access to information about how these decisions are made.
So how do you feel about them closing the building to public access at this point?
Well, I'm not really surprised. I've seen an erosion of democracy with regard to land use, and I heard a quote one time that democracy is buried with the bones of the Indian people, so it doesn't really surprise me that the democratic process does not really exist here, and that decisions are made through government policy without input from people. And the closing of the doors and the pulling of the curtains is simply they're in a state of denial as to the reality of the land use situation in the Kootenays.
What do you see as possibly the next step for people after this?
Well, I think people have pretty much used up all the options, and as we could see by the Walbrin, as we can see by the Carmana, as we could see by the Spotted Owl areas, that there are people who care in a different way than the people who are here trying to get a peaceful, respectful protest, that may very well be the next step for the Kootenays.
And what exactly is that?
I don't know the specifics. I know in the Walbrin there are people who are protecting the trees through spiking. There are people who protect the land in ways that are considered, quote, violent. But when you see that machine up on the road to Lasca, the word violent is the first thing that steps into your mind. And that these are ways that people are starting to feel desperate. I heard the fellow from the Sea Shepherd say they are about to begin training people because these methods are not succeeding. And those closed doors are the reason they're not succeeding. They don't want to deal with the people anymore.
So you feel people are not being heard and they're getting fed up, and who's to say what's to happen next?
I think there's a sense of rage and a sense of, I think because of the way democracy is not being adhered to. I think it's more than water here. I think it's more than land use. I think it's just we want it, we're going to make the plans to get it, and you don't really count, and neither do the future generations. And so that's how they have their policy for watershed logging. They've already got it in place. People have been working with these forest industry people, or this Ministry of Forests, for 15, 20 years about watersheds. And they have politely ignored us. They have written us letters, and now they're making their plans and they're pushing their roads in. And so I don't really know what the next step is. It's really depressing that this hasn't worked.
Do you have any other comments as far as like just people out there that are interested and care as to what to do?
Well, I think first thing, the media has to open up and tell us what's happening out there. I think there's a real shutdown on media coverage of what's really going on. The Lasca issue has not been presented except from the side of Ministry of Forests. There are people out in the bush who are trying to protect the land while we try and get a process that will allow them to come out of the bush. Nobody is even addressing the fact that people have to stand on roads in front of machines to put a halt to this long enough to get a process in place. So I think the first thing is that the media has to cover the story truthfully, and public free speech is what democracy is all about. And if the stories aren't coming out, then neither is democracy being served. So I think it's time that the Ministry of Forest opened its doors. I think it's time that they put deferrals on contentious land areas and dealt with it in an open, honest manner with all the groups included and all the issues that are involved in Lasca. The fact that no studies have been done proves that they don't even know what the issues are, and they're not willing to know what the issues are. So I think open the doors and let the people in. That's what we're asking. And let us see this information that they base decisions on. And then we'll at least have an opportunity to see how they make them. But personally, I think they're not showing us them because I think there has been a recommendation from this area. I know Corky Evans himself has said it was okay to log Lasca, so that's a recommendation. He's the MLA, and he's given his stamp of approval to logging Lasca. So, you know, I think there is recommendation from this end that this goes ahead.
So any last words to Al Bradley?
Yeah, I do see him as a human being, but I see him as a human being who is not addressing the problems of this area, that he is addressing simply a selective group of corporate people who have an economic base here, but certainly he is not addressing the future of this area with regard to forestry.
How do you feel about what happened here today at the Ministry of Forests?
Well, we're talking to a flunky who was giving us double talk, who has never answered one question straight. So it's like talking to the previous government, the social credit government. They have given us nothing but double talk. And it seems to me that the government of today is going the same way that the social credit government is going. They are losing their perspective of their election promises of listening to the people. Not only the native people, but all the people. I get so angry. And the mandate that we gave to the people of Valleycan, which is we are part of originally, is not to let the logging go through at any cost. And if legal means don't work, there's other means. I don't think violence settles anything, but when you're pushed so far back, like I gave that a man of an example, if this was clear cut and replanted, where would all your plants be? They'd be laying down the bottom of the hill here. One big rain would wipe everything down. The ground would not hold.
So what do you see as the next step? Do you see a next step? Do you have any ideas of what could happen now?
Well, I'm surprised that the MLA for this area is not here, for one thing, because he should be here. I'm sure he's well aware of it. If what he says that he's in touch with his community is true, he should have known about this, and he should have been here to answer questions or give some sort of solutions.
So you feel that Corky Evans should be much more involved in this issue than he is, and taking more responsibility?
Well, if that was the NDP promise, that they're going to listen to the people. And I know Harcourt personally. I know a lot of, like Bill Barley, I know him for many years. And since they've got into office, I've tried to call Bill Barley I don't know how many times, and until the election, the day before the election, I was getting calls from his office right and left. Before that, I was getting nothing. And he was an MLA before. He got re-elected. So that kind of tells me something, that my voice don't mean anything unless I'm going to sign an X on a ballot. You know. And if they don't realize, all they have to do is look at all the clear cuts in the Okanagan. I went to the North Moresby a couple of years ago. I spent a couple of nights in jail up there. And they dropped the charges on me, but they charged one person, right? But all the promises that time, the NDP was up there saying what they would be doing if they were in government. They seem to forgot that.
So you think it comes down to NDP promises that aren't being kept?
Definitely. And this, what's your MLA here's name?
Corky Evans?
Corky. He should be right here, right now, talking to the people. If he's that interested on the grassroots movement, that's what he said he was in. That's what the NDP philosophy is, grassroots movement. Well, it seems to me the movement is strictly for multinational corporations and the unions. That is the only two interests they have, the two interest groups that they are worried about because of the next election. They got to keep their promises to the unions, they got to keep their promises to some corporations, and that's what they're doing.
Okay. Well, anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I'd like to say that I'm glad there was a good turnout. Like between two of us from my reserve, we represent about 3,300 people.
What is the name of the reserve or the people?
Osuyas Indian Band. That's what the white man call it. We just call it the Okanagan tribe, because the tribe runs all the way from Chase all the way down to Lewiston, Idaho. That is our tribal area. So, in fact, we're trespassing on the Kootenay area right now, but the Valley Can is the Okanagan boundary line, this side of it. So
you're here in support of them preserving the West Arm Wilderness area? Is that what you're here for?
Yes, we're here to make sure that our elders are not disturbed that are buried, and we're also here to protect the watersheds. You know, that we gave the mandate to the people that are really fighting this burial sites, and we're also going into the overall logging and road building. If I could find out where what's his name? Bradley. If I could find out where his parents were buried, I'd go hire a D6 and go build me a little road. Same way with your Corky, whatever his name is. And I wonder if I would be charged. I'd be wanting to do some progress. I don't know what the progress would be, but I would think of something.
Well, they don't always see these parallels. When we were fighting the Kootenay diversion, I suggested that we go down to Victoria, and to offset our costs, we strip the turf from all that land around the Parliament buildings and the Empress Hotel and sell it and set up a business, because that is what they were going to do, come in here and take our water and make the lake less viable. So I thought tit for tat, but somehow the idea didn't go over.
Well, it's a good comparison anyway. I want to thank you both really very much.
I would just like to say that one thing, that once you destroy a watershed, the water it produces, You can plant all the trees you want there. The water is gone, the soil is gone. It's finished. They claim that they're not hurting watersheds by clear cutting it. They're destroying it.
Hi, we're with Shaw Cable. We were wondering if anybody would, if you would be interested in letting us in just to talk to some of the people here.
Can you shut that off?